talked about this, playing the last card, and they probably thought that's totally demoralised and disillusioned and all. And there were people there, people who were shattered, people who left the protest. But there's also a lot of anger. And it was decided the hunger strike would start again. There'd be another hunger strike, and this time it would be more, strategically devised, so it wouldn't be a number of people all at once who then all reach critical point all at once. Bobby Sands, who was the OC, the officer commanding the prisoners at that time, he would start it on his own on the 1st of March, which was 5 years to the date that criminalisation was introduced. He would start it, there would be a gap of 2 weeks, Francis Hughes would start it, and then there'd be another gap of a week, and two other guys, Raymond McCreese and Patsy O'Hara, would join it, and there'd only be the four. And originally it was thought that there wouldn't be any replacements, but that changed later on, that if one person died, then someone else would join the hunger strike. And when Bobby joined it, and Bobby was a fantastic singer. He's become like an icon now, and people all have their image on what it is, and they see his writings, which is great that the writings were there, but he just was a fantastic singer, and had the luxury of being in a wing with him for about 9 months. At one time in 1979 they separated 32 of us from the protesting blocks, which were 3, 4 and 5, and they moved us to an isolation unit sort of thing. And Bobby was there, and he'd get up at nights and we'd be asked to do like a one-man concert, because he just
sang like that.
It's just no one would be standing there on a cold night, and the voice reverberates around the place. Because anyway, he
did you know him before, or you met him?
No, I just met him in prison. And then that 9 months, he had been in prison before as a political prisoner. Got released. Was very much involved in the community work and development, community stuff, and then got rearrested again in 1977. Or 1987, or 77, sorry. So Bobby began it, and he thought, well, he's going to definitely die, because this time the Brits will want the pound of flesh. They want to see someone dead before there be any movement. So there was a very low, and because there had been the hunger strike just a few months earlier, people outside were exhausted, were afraid that would media talk about it. But when Bobby joined it in the first, and it was his decision that we would end the No Wash protest the following day. So it would then very clearly about our bigger demands, which was our own clothes, etc., rather than some confusion about, well, if we come off the protest, we would get clean cells and washing facilities. That no longer was the case. It was a good learning point for me, because I was really opposed to coming off the I was saying, like, Bobby's going to join hunger strike, the next day we come off the No Wash protest. It's like we're actually almost like sacrificing him or something, But it was a total wrong thinking. That he had the clarity, like, it's not about a No Wash protest. That's now been superseded by the hunger strike. It's about a real demand. And then I often think that in the back of his head, did he have it, that if the whole hunger strike failed, at least we were moved out of that situation. So it would be easier for the communists to move into some other type of thing. Anyway, totally by fluke, by accident, while he was on the hunger strike, there was a member of Parliament for Manor South Tyrone, which is a constituency in the north. He was a nationalist, elected to the House of Parliament in England. He was an independent nationalist, and was always a supporter of her demands, and had visited the jail a number of times. He died. For some reason, the British called a by-election very quickly to re-elect someone else, and the decision was made to put Bobby forward for election. Now at that time, and again, it's a difference between hindsight. Bobby won the election, but at the time we didn't know if that was a good idea or not, because if he lost, then Maggie Thatcher would say, well, your own people don't even support you.
Right.
At that time, Republicans didn't stand on elections. They actually boycotted parliaments in elections. So it was a total... and it was people like Gerry Adams now who thought it was a good idea. And to make it work, it would mean all the other nationalist candidates standing down and giving Bobby a free run at it.
Wow.
So any vote, if you're going to vote, you could only vote for Bobby if you're a nationalist. People weren't going to vote for the unionist.
That's right.
And he ended up, he won it by over 30,000 votes, which is more than Maggie Thatcher got in her constituency. And we went from a point of, the start of his hunger strike that he's definitely going to die, to now suddenly this is it, we won, you know. And again, it shows you
how far into the hunger strike?
It was about
when this happened?
Probably about 40 odd days. It was middle of April. I think it was about 20th of April. So it's maybe about 50 days or certainly late 40s. So he's still alive, obviously, and then within a few days after it, the only thing the British were doing was putting through emergency legislation that no prisoners could stand in for election. Whereas before that, you could be a prisoner and stand for election. Now they're afraid that someone else would stand, so so they're basically saying we're going to let him die, and none of the rest of us are going to be able to stand, and that's what they did. And and then we waited, and time just dragged out, and Bobby died after 66 days on the 5th of May. And then the days continued. Francis Hughes died a week later, and Rim McCrease and Patsy O'Hara a week after that, and them had a policy of people taking their place. Yeah. And then it came to a point, but it meant there was only 4 ever on it at one time. But then in the middle of June, we decided to increase the numbers on it. So over a number of weeks, someone would join it. I think it was about 6 over a period each Monday. So I ended up joining it on the 29th of June. Okay. By that time, 4 had died. And one died very shortly after it. Joe McDonnell. And I've continued on. And then again, there were attempts to try to resolve it just after I joined it. I was taken to the hospital for a meeting with this group called the Irish Commission for Justice and Peace, which was a probably well-meaning, totally naive group of people, like church and supported by the Dublin government, and people just looking some sort of, I suppose, easy way out. I mean, I've written about them. Like, there was only one who had any integrity. He was a priest, and he happened to be a cousin of Francis Hughes, who had died on hunger strike, and he was also a cousin of another guy, Tom McElwee, who at that time was alive but died also. And that was for 2 days, and talked about how they had reached this agreement, and they had got the basis of our demands, and we were trying to say, the basis, what do you mean by the basis? Well, more or less, and we're saying, we've been on this protest for 5 years, 4 people are already dead. Yeah. We want, in black and white, here's what's available. Right. And we couldn't get that, and went on for a whole day, and into the next day. And finally, at one point, and the dynamics of them changed. On the first day, certain people were talking who would have been, like that guy Oliver Crilley, who's the priest. The next day he was quiet, and it was more dominated by this guy who was a member of the SDLP, which was a Social Democratic Labour Party here, Nationalist Party, and became an MEP, I think, a member of the European Parliament. But anyway, at one point the next day after this, and people were exhausted. Yeah. On hunger strike, all we took was water and salt. You need salt for your brain and the electrical impulses and that there, but there was no...
Like you would put the salt in the water and
drink it? Well, I did at the start, which was really terrible. So after that, dip wet your finger and dip it in salt and take it. It's easier to take the salt that way rather than, because you put it in the water, it's like...
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible, Yeah. But anyway, after it's going on all the next day and still this dragging out, and we had asked for black and white, and we wanted Gerry Adams and Danny Morrison to come in and be our witnesses on it. They had Danny Morrison in on a private visit with us, but not Gerry, but still nothing. And as he said, when we met, there was still nothing. There's all this vagueness up there somewhere. And at one point then, Tom McElwee, who was sitting across from his cousin, who was a priest, said, so basically you're saying that we have the clothing and nothing else. And to his credit, Oliver Crilley said yes. And whenever he said that, and the guy facing me, who was the politician guy, I always thought this ironic, he thumped the table and says, it would be criminal to say that. So he's talking about his own colleague. And I thought it was just the word criminal when the whole thing was about criminalisation. Exactly. It was just... clueless. I don't know. Yeah. But I suppose the right for me around that time, the morning before, whenever we met for the first time, everybody was in... it was the canteen in the prison hospital. And this guy there, Kieran Doherty, who became elected too as a TD in the South. But one person